Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Reds Rundown Podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob, he's Joe, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Joe, how's your weekend been?
Pretty good, man. Glad to have some spring training baseball going on in the background while some other sports are going on, but always fun following the storylines.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And we will absolutely be getting into those spring training games today, as well as going into our bullpen predictions. I think that, truthfully, Joe, this is going to be one of the bigger discussions because I think you and I did a good job, I think kind of giving our thoughts on the pitching rotation. And for those of you who were on Reddit who were commenting and letting us know your thoughts, I had some really good discussions with you guys, really appreciated everything that was surrounding that. So I'm interested to see what you end up thinking of our bullpen predictions because I think this one is way more up in the air. I think I ended up counting like potentially 12 to 13 guys that could end up being in our bullpen. And we probably realistically only have 8 spots. So really interested to get into that one. And we are going to start off with our question of the week being, who do you have in your bullpen? Again, generally it's going to be somewhere between 7 and 9 spots if you count 13 position players plus your 5 starting rotation guys. So it just depends on if you want to take out somebody, from the bench and replace them with a bullpen guy, all that kind of jazz. So I think it's really interesting. I'm excited to dive into that, and we want to know what you guys think. Make sure to let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're not and you're listening on Spotify, you can reach out to us on Twitter. You can get those. They're right above our heads, so you can feel free to tag us or call us out for if you think we're being stupid. Joe and I appreciate that, actually. We love a good banter. So before we jump into it, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I'm excited to get to our bullpens later in the show, but we have some other stuff to talk about first, Rob.
We sure do, because if you guys didn't know, this is going to be also the very first episode that's on the Reds Rundown YouTube channel. Very excited about that, by the way. It's still, part of the Game House, obviously, but Joe and I decided that we wanted to make a specific YouTube channel because while we may not be those people that are going to be giving you, full-length podcasts every day right now, we are going to be giving you, little shorts, TikToks, whatever you want to call them. Depends, I guess, on which one you're watching on, Reels even. But we'll be giving them anytime anything significant happens or anytime we think that there's something worth discussing. Joe put his pitching rotation, guys over there on one. He also talked about the 2 guys that we are about to talk about as well, or at least one of them. I can't remember if you got to the second guy, but this is something that we're planning on doing. So if you're looking for quick 60-second or less updates on the Reds, that's going to be the place to go. So make sure you go over there and subscribe as well as on the Game House YouTube channel. And if you want specifically, just this podcast, just Reds Rundown Thoughts Podcast, everything about the show and about the Cincinnati Reds, obviously, as well, you got to go and head over to the Reds Rundown YouTube channel. I will make sure to be linking that, and I'm probably going to be also making a short, or at least a very short video to put over on the main Game House YouTube channel to redirect everybody over here, as well as we kind of make that transition. So very excited about that, but let's go into some of these guys that you talked about, Joe. Mike Ford and Tony Kemp sign with the Reds with invites to the Major League Club, obviously. I will be honest with you. Tony Kemp, I was like, maybe. Mike Ford interests me quite a bit, if I'm being honest. More so than Kemp, just because I think he fills a certain role. But I did want to get your thoughts on it, as so far I've been the one talking a lot. So I want to hear what you have to say.
I'm the opposite. Mike Ford, if he takes a single at bat with the Reds, I'll be sorely disappointed.
Really?
I don't think he's very good. I see why they signed him. It's just depth. These are both guys who are going to be minor leaguers. Even when things go wrong, I don't see Mike Ford really coming in and having an impact. I think Tony Kemp can, because he is filling a lot of needs for this Reds team. It's going to be, hey, if someone in the outfield gets injured, we could bring him up from AAA. Defensive speed, or even offensive speed and defense as well. we have tons of outfielders who do not play outfield, who are not brought up as outfielders. This guy, he makes incredible catches in the outfield.
Yep.
You could see him come up and someone goes down, he comes up to the major league team. He just comes in the 7th or 8th inning and just closes out games from a defensive perspective. And he can also be a true center fielder. You can move guys around. I really do like the Tony Kemp signing. I think it helps with depth. I'm not high on Mike Ford. I don't think he's going to see the Reds. I don't even know if he'll stick around after he has an opt-out date like Kemp does. I think of March 23rd. So I don't know if he'll stick around after that.
Yeah, I mean, so when I say that, I more just think he adds something that they don't really have down in the minor leagues. When I'm talking about Mike Ford, I don't know that they really have like a big power bat potentially that they could bring up if they needed to in certain situations. I actually think Tony Kemp is pretty buried, a lot more buried on the depth chart, just because I think there are a lot of young guys that play similar positions, and I think that he's somebody who's going to struggle to see the field, to be honest with you. So I guess we both see that. I guess the main point is they're both AAA depth guys, just to be clear. Like, I don't think either of us are expecting them to necessarily have a major impact. I do like the idea of the Reds actually going out and getting guys with experience to fill out their AAA roster. And I think this is something that we've been seeing them do a lot, especially over the last, I would say, month or so, with, I think, so many guys not being signed to deals because this free agency offseason has been really, really slow. I mean, guys like Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell, the Cy Young Award winner from last year, are still available right now, which is insane to me that we're in the first week of spring training and there's so many guys that are out there. And I think that's maybe the way baseball is going. So I'm interested to see if that continues. But I do agree with you. I don't think Mike Ford is necessarily great. I just like that he brings something different. That's all. I think that, yeah, he's a lefty power bat. I understand that we have those as well, but I think in terms of a depth outside of the main roster, I don't think we have a lot of that necessarily down in the minors. I think a lot of our guys are more toolsy, speedy, batting for average kind of guys, where I think he adds that element of power. And I think in Great American Ballpark, if he did have to come up, I think that he would probably thrive. And when I say thrive, his level of thriving is 235 and, maybe 10 home runs at best. So, yeah, I'm just excited because I like seeing these kinds of signings. I should have prefaced that a little bit more. With Kemp, I do agree with you. Defensively, he's insane. He's like extremely fast. He has not lost a step with age, which I think has been really important. I think he's a good defensive guy. I actually just think that from what I've already been hearing and seeing of Edwin Arroyo, I think he is an insane defender. And if they just want a defensive guy, especially for the middle infield, I think that he may be their guy. And I like Bubba Thompson and Stu Fairchild a little bit more than Kemp for the outfield. But I am definitely interested to see if Kemp can make it. The one thing I have heard about him is that he's apparently an insanely awesome clubhouse guy. And so that could be really big for them to have that kind of a veteran presence where, he's been on, some pretty bad teams in Oakland and still been, able to kind of lift them up. So I guess those are my big thoughts on them. Do you have any last thoughts on Ford or Kemp? Because I don't think we need to waste too much time on guys who may never see the Reds roster.
No, I don't agree with you that this is something they need. Mike Ford, at least, I think they have so many guys who are going to be playing first base this year for the Reds that if one guy goes down, guess what? We have Encarnacion Strand. We have Candelaria. We have India possibly playing first base. We have Stevenson still playing first base. He's mostly going to be more catcher this year, but I don't see a need for him. I get the organizational. Why not take a flyer on a guy?
Sure.
But he's hitting 211 in his career, 36 home runs. I'd much rather have Tony Kemp because we don't have a lot of true outfielders, and we don't have guys who are in AAA right now who are experienced outfielders who can play good defense. And I think that could be an issue. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be the biggest issue. I'm always like a team offense guy. Put your best offensive lineups out there because defense in today's game doesn't matter. But I think end of games, we've seen David Bell take guys out. Even Nick Castellanos, his first year, opening day, takes him out of the game because he's not good at defense. And I think it could be useful. So not going to be either of these guys, not going to be major contributors, but there could be a thing where, hey, is on the postseason roster. Two outfielders got hurt, and we need someone who'd be on the bench and maybe be a pinch runner too. Like I think that adds more value to this team than Ford. So I've seen many Reds fans online be very upset with like, hey, these guys better not take any bats from the young guys. That's not happening unless there's a disaster scenario where people get injured. They're not taking bats from everyone else. These are role players at best. I think Tony Kemp has a better chance of actually helping out this roster this year than Mike Ford does. But again, both of them might opt out on the March 23rd in their contract. So. True. By the start of the season, they might be gone. So who knows? But yeah, good signings. Good to take flyers on both of them. I just think Tony Kemp's a little bit more suited to what we might need.
I appreciate that this is our first true disagreement so far, and it's over guys who will probably not have any sort of significant impact on it. This is what you get at the Reds Rundown, is we're going to disagree on some pretty random stuff sometimes, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the discourse. We continue on. The Reds did play 2 spring training games, at least as of the recording of this episode. Sorry if you're watching a little later in the week. They probably will have played 1 or 2 more games at that point. But the Reds are 2-0 right now, which is, obviously spring training games don't matter, but it has been good to see and listen to, at least for me, some of the things that came from those games. So I wanted to go through them really quickly. The Reds won over the Guardians 4-0. Nothing super big from this game other than Benson hit an absolute monster shot. Like, I don't even think he got all of it, is what's crazy, is like he kind of stopped his swing. As weird as it sounds, like if you rewatch it, like he did not follow through all the way, which I know that he is prone to doing, I think, at times, and it's hurt him occasionally, but like that ball was mashed. I mean, the second that he hit it, I was like, oh, that reminds me of that walk-off home run against the Dodgers that I've seen 1,000 times now because of commercials. But, man, that was an absolute monster shot. And then my last thing that I want to talk about from that game, because, I think that one was a lot more insignificant than the Angels game, at least in terms of even a spring training game. Elly De La Cruz debuted his new swing, and his new stance, which I had some good points to it. I love the fact that he is batting with a more open stance. He is such a lanky guy. He can reach all parts of the plate. I think that leaving the inside as vulnerable as he did, where up and in fastballs were giving him a lot of trouble when he couldn't get around on them, especially last season, I really, really, really like that addition to it. The second part was the Juan Soto, like almost shuffle that he had. I watched his full at bat. I think it was his first one, maybe his second one as well. And when he was like taking pitches, I mean, he was doing the whole like lean down completely, watch him all the way in. This is something that I remember growing up with. For all of you out there who love, Pete Rose, one of the things that my dad always talked about him was he would actually watch the pitch all the way into the catcher's mitt. And I do think that that's something that younger players can do, people who are, relearning the strike zone, understanding where it actually is ending up, right? And so I really enjoyed seeing that. I think he actually worked himself into a really good count, but then his swing was terrible. Like he made a bad decision in that same at bat that he got a hit as to what he actually swung at. And people are like, but he got a hit, it doesn't matter. That's fine. Like I'm glad that he can flare it out there and, do whatever. But on a 2-1 or a 3-1 count, if I remember correctly, you shouldn't have such an off-balance swing. You should be taking a huge cut at something that's in the zone. And that's just something that will come with time, something that he's going to learn. And so far, at least, he's had 2 incredible mentors. Last year, he had Joey Votto. This year, he's had Juan Soto during the offseason. So I think his eye is only going to improve with the help of guys like that. I just want him to, when he is taking a swing, I don't love that off-balance kind of almost flick his wrist out there kind of swings that he takes occasionally. It was something we saw last year that got him into some trouble in weak contact and kind of just bad flails at bad pitches. So pitch recognition is definitely something I want to see him working on. And that's what spring training games are for. That's why I enjoy watching those aspects of it. But do you have any thoughts on the other parts of the Guardians game?
I was happy I saw the Will Benson home run. I was really happy about that. I think he's a guy we can forget about a little bit, but when he gets a walk-off home run, he brings the energy, and I think he does need more publicity because he had an incredible season last year, and it's tough because he's playing the same position as Fraley, and it's getting at bats is always tough, but good for him. And then Elly, I'm really encouraged by him. Even the hit where he was off balance, like this is something I think that he wasn't doing last year a lot. He didn't get those kind of little flares. It was more like
True.
it's going to be I'm going to hit this into the Ohio River, or it's going to be a swing and a miss, and we're going to strike out. So this is for me. This isn't a bat where like yeah the count's favorable, but he might still strike out in those situations last year. Now I'm thinking like hey if he can do this where maybe the count gets into a worse advantageous position where he's down 1-2 and he can do stuff like that. That's great.
Yep.
Sucks that he was off
Yep.
balance. You want to see more exit velocity. You want to see more power. But we know he has that in him. I was more encouraged to see him get one of these hits where it's like last year it was power or bust, and now this year maybe he can do some stuff where he hits some off speed pitches or he hits it to the opposite side of the field or does something like that. So encouraged by his first at bat. We'll see how he does as he goes along spring training. There's still a lot of time, and I want to see how it develops more fully for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And to be clear, like having more types of flares in especially bad counts, like you said, I think could take him from being a perennial 250 hitter to something as much as like a 280 plus hitter, which is, I know everybody expects him to be this ultimate superstar, 300 plus, batting average, 40 home runs, 1,000 stolen bases, obviously not that many, but he is going to take time to refine. He's so toolsy. He is a guy that I want to see Reds fans be as patient with as possible. And while, yes, I'm the one currently that was criticizing him the most, it was more of constructive criticism. I think he has made a lot of improvements, but I do love seeing that. We move on, though, to the Angels game. The Reds won 9-4 on Sunday. They were pretty much in control of the game from the get-go. I think they kind of rolled out some more established players than the Angels did, but regardless, it was really good to see Hunter Green. And, I'm listening to the game and I'm trying to kind of pick up on his counts, his pitches. I, specifically tried to tune in for those first 2 innings so that I could kind of get an idea of, what they were trying to do with Green. It looked like they were kind of keeping him at around a 30 pitch count deal, which is fine. I'd like to see him cut that down. For those of you who don't know, generally, I like to say, and I was trying to teach my high school kids, is like about 15 pitches in an inning is a really solid inning. Anything less, obviously, is fantastic, but generally, like I like to be somewhere around 15 pitches an inning. He was pretty close to that, which I think was good. I think he was going to probably be somewhere around maybe 35-ish, maybe 40. Because generally, if you're pitching 20 pitches an inning, you're going to get about 100 pitches. You'll get 5 innings, which is what you want, right? So it was good to see that they have a good pitch count on him, or a number of pitches for him. But he was doing what he does: walk a guy, strike a guy, walk a guy, strike out 2 guys, right? Like, I know he's working on 2 new pitches, so I really think that that's a promising thing. I watched this morning, he had an interview after the game where he was talking about his new splitter and his new curveball, 2 pitches that I think are really, really, really great and important for his arsenal. If he really doesn't feel comfortable with that changeup, a splitter is an awesome pitch to have. Good lower velocity, but I think the movement on it, in addition to his fastball. I mean, can you imagine seeing 100 plus like right at your shoulders, and then a splitter that drops down to your ankles like right afterwards? That's an insane kind of pitching sequence there. But he said the splitter felt unbelievable. And ultimately, he only gave up 1 hit and struck out 4 of the 5 batters that he was against. So it's good to see that he came back. Like, he walked a guy on 4 pitches. I don't know if you were listening or not, but then he struck the next guy out on 3 straight. So I think a little bit of what we expect out of Hunter Green. But do you have any, like, what was your impression of that? I know, again, it's pretty meaningless baseball in terms of like actual stats, but I like seeing what he was working on.
One more point about Ellie, real quick, Rob.
Sure.
The master of the flares, Joey Votto, was his first teacher, like you said.
That is true. That is actually
to see more of that as more time goes on. So the choking up on the bad count, flare it out there. That's Joey Votto to a T. True. But for Hunter Green, I was really impressed with this. Again, whether he pitched bad or pitched well, it wasn't going to change my opinion of what he can do going into the season. But because he does have the new pitches, it is interesting to watch him more than probably any other pitcher the Reds have in spring training, just to see if he can develop that. Because I do think it makes him a much better pitcher. Now he The splitter felt great for him. I am really intrigued by the curveball because it is going to change things drastically for hitters. I think curveballs are still the best off-speed pitch you can throw, unless you have a Luis Castillo changeup, which not everyone has, as we found out with Reds past couple of years.
Sadly.
But his fastball can reach triple digits. His slider is still very, very fast. His curveballs were hitting in the low 80s, and
No
that is a
way.
20-mile-an-hour difference. Yeah, I saw Charlie. I think Charlie Goldsmith tweeted it out. It's like one of them was 81, so that's a 20-mile-an-hour difference.
That's insane.
The arm angle I thought looked about the same. The arm speed looked about the same. That's what you want to do is to full hitters.
Yep.
So we'll see if he can continue to make it look more like a fastball is coming out of his arm. But if he can have that curveball do that, I mean, it's just a devastating pitch. I mean, we see Clayton Kershaw as the pitcher he is for all these years because he has that 12-6 curveball. I got to see it in person last year when they played the Reds. I was up high, but you could still see how much it just dropped, man. So that curveball will keep people off base. I'm excited for that. I think the splitter is a good one as well, but that curveball has me really encouraged. I'm glad he feels the splitter right now, but if he can get that curveball going in the way that I think he can, that Cy Young Award is going to be on his short list this year.
Oh, without a doubt. I think having, and I want to point something out, by the way. Joe is very rare to say things like that. Like when he is saying potential Cy Young candidacy, that is coming from a place of true belief, not just like, hey, like, this could happen. Like I for those of you who are hopefully going to be weekly listeners, that is no small deal. And I will say, I do agree with Joe. This guy, like what Joe's talking about is called like the pitching tunnel, right? Where basically if you have the same arm slot and you don't slow down your arm speed, because those are the things that hitters are looking for when trying to pick up pitches, that's what makes some people just absolutely devastating. That's why they say, like, if somebody's able to hide the ball well, right? Like you can't really tell where the laces are and everything like that. If Hunter Greene can have 3 effective off-speed pitches to add to his already absolutely electric and nearly effortlessly, wow, struggle with that word for some reason, a triple-digit fastball, he will be nearly unhittable. Truly, when he's on his game, I think walks and putting himself into bad counts that allow for hitters to kind of hone in on a specific pitch for a home run, like those have been his biggest things. When you're in a 3-1 count and you can throw a nasty curveball when everybody's expecting a fastball, that 3-1 count instantly changes from batter favored to pitcher favored, right? And those kinds of things I think are absolutely imperative for a young pitcher, specifically Hunter Greene, obviously. So I will say that I think that he's it is very encouraging the way that he pitched yesterday. And I know the walks, whatever, like those are going to come with being a power pitcher. But if he can consistently do what he did yesterday, strike out, again, like 2 batters basically an inning, Cy Young will absolutely be in consideration because he will also be leading a team that I think has serious playoff contention. And, we'll dive into that, I think, once we get closer to the season start. But a couple other, I think, things of note from this game before we move on to our bullpen discussion. Spencer Steer leading off because they wanted to get him at least 3 at-bats, I think was super smart, by the way, of David Bell and company. He starts off with a rope double down the line, which is just Spencer Steer to a tier, or to a T. Yes, there you go. He is insane. Like his balance and his ability to hit, it's crazy to me that people were not higher on him after what we've seen over the last year or so. Obviously, there are young, like all of our guys are young. Some will fall off, some will get better, some will stay the same. I think he has one of the better chances of at least staying the same or getting better heading into this next year, which is pretty crazy to think about. Luke Maile hitting a home run. I think if we can get any pop out of him, like we saw a little bit of last year, I think that's a huge bonus to have for your secondary catcher. Stu Fairchild, man, they said he is here to hit lefties. The man goes 3 for 3. He looked really good from what I saw, 1 at bat essentially of his and a highlight. Looked great. Love that. Bubba Thompson, by the way, 3 for 3 and 4 for 5 with 2 doubles so far. That kid's still only 25 years old. Can you imagine if they find like another type of Will Benson contributor from a team that just kind of gave up on a very toolsy, interesting prospect? That would be great. Edwin Arroyo's already apparently turning heads. I didn't get to see any of his defensive plays on Saturday, but apparently he made like 1 or 2 really good ones. I was listening yesterday and he made this insane diving stop and they said that the runner was not even close. He just absolutely threw a bullet across the field, going to his left, by the way, as well, which is what's even more impressive. He also went 2 for 3, and then two guys fighting for spots. Brandon Williamson goes 2 innings, 1 hit, 2 strikeouts. Absolutely love that. If he can be a type of innings eater guy at the back of the rotation one day, or maybe even this year, that's about all you can ask for. Antone did give up a hit, did give up a run off of a walk, but then he also struck out all 3 guys that he faced, something we come to expect. So anything from those guys, stand out to you? Those are the guys that I think absolutely, were worth pointing out from that game.
Stuart Fairchild, I think he knows the pressure's on to make this roster. He showed up right away. I think I would still give him the starting nod no matter what happens in spring training on the opening day roster, but doing this and defending his position makes it a lot easier to make that call. I'm one of those guys who's like, hey, he did pretty well for us last year. Let's see what he can do to start the year in limited bats against left-handers. And I think that's something they'll do, but it's tough when Bubba's behind you too. Bubba's doing well too, but I think you give the nod to the guy who was here last year. You give the nod to the guy who's in part of the locker room culture last year, and you go with that to start the year. As long as he doesn't just absolutely fall on his face the rest of the way, I think this was a really good showing from him. And then we're going to talk about bullpen here in a little bit, but I think it's going to be an absolute battle with some of these guys. Like Williamson, I'm not sure he's going to be part of that starting rotation like we talked about last week, but he's still like a good pitcher, man. I think he's got a lot of potential. Mm-hmm. So it's just one of those things where injuries are going to happen. He's going to have to come up and pitch some innings for us, but who knows whether it's bullpen, who knows whether it's starter, who knows whether he starts in AAA then comes up. It's going to be an absolute mess to figure this out, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I think the last point that I want to add with you on Williamson is he was always the guy who was lower than Lodolo, right? In terms of I think even in the TCU rotation, got drafted lower, everything. And when he came up, his numbers since he had been traded over to the Reds were not good down on the farm system. He had really struggled, I think. To see him work his way to becoming what he ultimately became down the stretch was truly and I'll sing his praises for this. It takes a lot for a guy to come in to a young rotation to be able to have an impact on a team and to change a lot of what he does to find success during the middle of a season. That is not easy. When you have thrown tens of thousands of pitches, right, from a certain arm slot and from in a certain rhythm and way, right, with your just in general, right, to make those massive types of changes that he ended up making that ultimately changed the way that he did, and I think he picked up a cutter near the end of the season as well, if I remember correctly. I just hats off to him. To see him come in and do well as well, I think is awesome. And ultimately, I guess I'll slightly spoil. I don't have him in my bullpen yet, but I think that's more just because of what they need him for with the rotation. And I don't want to see him get ruined in the bullpen. But after teeing that up, are you ready to head to the bullpen?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's knock out, I think, a couple guys like we did with the rotation that we think are just automatics, right? I'll let you start this time. There's one guy who we both know 1,000% is in the bullpen.
Yeah, so actually, let's start. What do you think? I think there's 4 or 5 locks for the bullpen right now, unless the injury happens.
I have closer to 6 or 7 based on
locks. Okay.
Well, mostly just
let's go.
Mostly just based on the fact that what the Reds did money-wise, the commitment that they made to these types of players. So yeah, I would like to see who. I think let's just get Diaz out of the way, right?
Okay, Diaz. Diaz is number 1. He's going to be there end of games. We know everything about him so far, so no questions about him. Excited to see him continue to be one of the best closers in the game.
Yeah, he's electric, man. He's consistent. I know that sometimes closers kind of lose that. I think he's effectively wild at times, which I think is great. And I absolutely love him. He's one of my favorite surprises over the last few years, especially because everybody's talking about his brother. Everybody's like, oh, his brother's the best reliever in baseball. Then, he comes in and has one of the best seasons in baseball as a closer. It was awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Who's your next guy then?
I'm going to say Lucas Sims is a lock as well. I know he's on your list too, but he's a guy who has filled so many different roles for us over the years, and he's done so well. I think he could have been a closer, can be a closer in a pinch. He's done that in the past and maybe not had all the best results, but if Diaz gets hurt or something, he can do that. He can be a long reliever. He's got the stamina to do that. He is, I think, pretty vital to this bullpen.
It's so interesting to watch what Lucas Sims was, right? Like, who would have thought that he'd be the best guy out of that Adam Duvall trade all those years ago, right? And then the guy who's just stuck around, and the guy who benefited the most from the Trevor Bauer stuff. He's talked about, the different RPMs and everything that he learned, and you could see the drastic changes that he made to his game, once that kind of mindset came in. It wasn't just Trevor Bauer, it was also the overall organizational stuff, but he's credited, I know in the past at least, a lot of his development based on some tips that he got from Bauer when they were playing together over that 2020 season. So, yeah, he's an automatic lock for me. I think that he is, if there's a guy that's going to go out and pitch a huge 8th inning for us, I don't want it to be anybody other than Lucas Sims right now. When he is healthy, he is devastating. It is like damn near impossible to hit him when he's on his game. So absolutely love him. All right. The next guy that I'm going to give it the nod to for myself is Emilio Pagan. They signed him to that big deal. I think that they have big aspirations for him. I will say this though. I think that there are guys who may be better fits than him on this team and based on the stadium. I don't know necessarily that he is, I know that he's home run prone, right, at times throughout most of his career, and that does worry me a bit. I know he has really turned it on over these last few years, and I'm hoping that, with Derek Johnson and everything, they can make maybe those last little adjustments that he needs to be, a really awesome late inning guy if you need him to be. But he is the one of, I think, all of the recent additions to the bullpen, that includes, even from the deadline with Sam Moll, that I have the most questions about, and is one that there are some guys that I think aren't going to get spots that I may actually trust more. And it's just because Pagan is new, right? But like, he is one that I have some pretty serious concerns for heading into the season. And I'm hoping that those will be alleviated as we get to see him pitch more, and maybe I'll just fall in love with his arsenal. I haven't had a ton of chances to study him, obviously, yet, but he is one that concerns me a little bit.
I mean, after all the Twins guys we've gotten over the years that have done well for us,
that's true.
Spencer Steer and everything. Right? No, I think he's a good piece for this bullpen. I think he is a lock just based on the money they invested into him. Mm-hmm. The fly ball stuff will be something I think Derek Johnson is familiar with having to fix with pitchers career. To start the year, you're right. Like, there is a possibility maybe he just not the ballpark for him, and this is a waste of money. But I do think that he is one of the locks. I'll go to my 4 since I think you already mentioned him anyway. But Sam Moll's a lock. Yeah. He's a lefty. Came up, did great for us after he came over in the trade last year. We know David Bell loves the lefty stuff, so there's going to be at least 2 lefties in the bullpen, if not more. I can't see a scenario where Sam Moll doesn't start the season in the bullpen unless there's an injury.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. He was even better than I thought he was. Like, it's almost like he was so automatic. He came into games, I didn't even think about how well he did, right? Because he was not necessarily pitching in like big situations or anything, but he was coming in and getting the job done. And you need guys like that. He reminds me of, I can't remember his name right now. Oh my gosh, Sean, the guy that we got from the Cubs all those years.
Sean Marshall.
Yes, Sean Marshall. Just in the sense of, like, they don't necessarily pitch the same, but they're lefties that are reliable guys that can pitch you great late inning games or can come in like pretty much whenever you need to. The Reds made that similar type of move during their last playoff stretch, and I loved that. I think that that's like the kind of stuff that they need to do. Now, obviously, Sean Marshall was a much bigger pickup because he was in a much bigger town in Chicago. Moll being from, Oakland, I think kind of made this deal not seem as big as it honestly was for the Reds, especially at the time. So I think he's absolutely a lock. Couldn't agree with you more. I'm going to give my last guy that I think is 100% a lock between both of us, and then I think this is maybe where we'll start to deviate. Nick Martinez. I don't think he's going to make the rotation. I know that everybody's like, he's going to be there. Like, that's why they signed him. Starting pitching money, blah, blah, blah. Guys, they just had a lot of money to throw at somebody, and they really must believe in his tools. And I think they just really wanted him for the fact that he can do just about anything, whether that's bullpen work, starting rotation work. I think he could be that bridge guy. I think I heard Charlie Goldsmith on 700, and I mentioned this, last week during the pitching rotation one. But as a reminder, like he mentioned, I think that they think the idea is that if somebody can only go like 3 innings, let's say that maybe they just have a really high pitch count, maybe the game's still going okay for the Reds, but not that Martinez is just going to be a guy who eats terrible innings, but like maybe they're still in the game, but they don't want to waste, a Hunter Green day where he's thrown 80 pitches through the first 3 innings. He just obviously doesn't have it that day, but they're down maybe only 2. Nick Martinez comes in and pitches, the 4th, 5th, and 6th innings to kind of lead you into that latter half or latter third of the game, right? Those kinds of ideas, and I think his versatility, like he's a true utility man in the rotation or in the bullpen. I think he's an absolute lock. I actually really like his stuff. He's one that I've seen a lot more of than Pagan, and I was pretty excited about that signing. Not for the money, but I do think for the player. So yeah, that was my other lock.
I do think he's a lock based on the money they put into him. Did come along the last 2 years. He wasn't the best before that in his career, but he's been good the last 2 years. I think he gets the lock here, and I do think I want him to be that super utility man that you're saying too. I mentioned before, it's good when you have guys who can do stuff like that. Lucas Sims can pitch a lot of innings. He, former starter, but I want him to be in his role. I want him to be in that 8th inning role. I want Martinez to go 8 innings when needed. I want him to be able to, hey, starter pitched 100 pitches through 6 innings. We need someone to get some people out in the 7th. Yep. I want him to be that guy who can kind of do multiple things. Every pitching staff, every team's going to have these glue guys. He needs to be that glue guy for him to be worth this money. I think he will end up being that, and he is, I think, a lock to make it, which leaves us to some guys who may not be locks, but there's one more I think pretty confidently he will be on the opening day bullpen.
I think so as well. I want to see if you and I are on the same page with this.
Ian Jabot. Last
season, okay, all right.
He had pitchers across the league talking about how much development he had done, how they were interested in his pitches. I believe they played the Padres, and they were talking to, I think at the All-Star break, they were talking to one of the Padres, like, what guy has really impressed you this year? And he said Ian Jabot was the one pitcher that had impressed him. I think started off the year pretty well last year. I think he can find some success, especially in this bullpen. I was very happy with what he did. Now, he is a righty, which is going to hurt him because there's a lot of righties who are going to be out there for the last couple spots. And, David Bell will want to have a bunch of lefties. But I was really super impressed with him. I was impressed that other people in the league noticed what he was doing because he didn't have the more defined role of being a closer or something like that. So I think I wouldn't say an absolute lock because I think there's still some maybe people like, oh, well, he wasn't that. No one's really seen him as this really good pitcher before last year. But I do think he's going to be on the opening day roster in the bullpen.
Yeah, I think it was Manny Machado. I want to say that said it. It was either him or
I think it was. I think it was a pitcher who said it. Like, I'm really impressed with him. I've watched his stuff, and
okay.
I think it was. Yeah.
Maybe you're right then. I don't know. You're right though. I know it was a Padres player. I couldn't remember who. To be fair to myself, I did put him 3rd on my list. He was the 3rd guy that I instantly thought of when I was making this bullpen list. When I started to look at some of the other people, I was split. I think that he, another guy we'll probably talk about here in a minute, Buck Farmer, TJ Antone, and Fernando Cruz are the guys who I think are all kind of in a similar position, I'll say. And Jabot is a guy who I think is really interesting. I think he's way better than people are going to give him credit for. I do have him currently in my bullpen. I don't have him as a lock, but I do have him in my 8-person bullpen because, as a reminder, again, 5 starting pitchers, 8 bullpen guys. So he is currently in my bullpen. I think he brings a lot. I think he hides the ball as well as anybody. Like, we talk about hiding the ball. Apparently one of the things that make Jabot so good is that he is really he's a guy who I think can not just hide the ball, but I think trick hitters with the weird kind of arm angle that he has as well. Which may not seem like it to you guys, but that 3/4 slot for him, I think it's weird at the same time, like for how big he is. Most of the time you see them like straight overhead. He actually reminds me a little bit, making another comparison, of a bigger guy, Todd Coffey, if you remember him, from way, way back in the day. I think they have a similar type of arsenal. Jabot throws a lot harder. But I think that they are comparable in the sense as well as I think he's a little bit more on the line than you do, but that's not to say that he's not really, really good, to be fair. If you had to ask me where he would rank in terms of the guys that we've already like talked about, I would already pick Jabot over Pagan and Martinez personally. I would trust him more with it. It's just that there are a ton of righties to give innings to, and my next lock guy is going to be another lefty. I think Brent Suter came to Cincinnati with the intention of being in the bullpen, right? Like, I think that he had options. I think he is also a guy who, similar to Sam Moll, like, look, there are a lot more, righty hitters obviously in baseball, but we do give up a lot of home runs to lefties, especially in the past. Having two guys that get consistent ground balls, I think, especially from the left side, is almost a lock for me, right? Like, if Moll's not available that day, Suter goes in. If Suter's not available that day, Moll goes in. The fact that he gave up one home run all year up in Colorado is absolutely, like, that matters to me more than pitch speed, pitch arsenal, walks, strikeouts. In Great American Ballpark, if you can get ground balls, you are unbelievably valuable to me. And just the way that he's talked about the team and, like, you know, he's a hometown guy. I think that he gets the nod for the bullpen for, opening day.
Yeah, I think Suter and Jabot are on the same level for me, where it's like they should be in the opening day bullpen. Everything they've done says that. It's just a matter of, like, hey, for the lefties too, it's like, which lefties do you like? Do you like Brandon Williamson coming out of the bullpen? I do not as well as you do. I'd rather have him be in AAA and keep on starting and keep on getting comfortable with starting. I agreed with too. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, yes, you did that too. But Brent Suter, definitely impressive. Only gave up 3 home runs all last year, like you said. 1 in Colorado, I believe, was the only one that he gave up there. But he's very good pitcher. I think they brought him in for a reason, and this is good because this is going to lead us to, I think, while you have your reservations about Pagan, and I think there might be some injuries. I think there's 7 that we're kind of like, I feel like, still comfortable with. Like, I feel okay with. And what sucks for me, because I know who your 8th guy is because I can see your list, is I think he gets a bad rap, and I think he might not make the opening day bullpen, but I'll let you get into him.
Yeah, so my last guy is going to be Buck Farmer, and there's a couple reasons why. When we played against Detroit to start that 2020 season, he was, like, carving us up, right? And I thought it was really interesting that later on, obviously, the Reds kind of noted that. They ended up picking him up. I do think he gets a really bad rap, even though I think that he is a guy who you need. He is an innings eater. That is what you need sometimes. You need guys who can come in and who can throw strikes as well, right? Like, he's not a huge walk guy. He's not necessarily a huge strikeout guy, although he was striking out almost a batter per inning last year, which I think was good. But I think he's a guy who is just tough and can eat a ton of innings. You don't have to worry about injuries, unlike some of the other guys on this list. I think there's a couple other people that you'll probably get into maybe that could take this position as well. But I will say, without saying their names, I will say one's a lefty. You don't need a third lefty in the bullpen, at least in my opinion, even though that lefty is better against righties than he is against lefties. So that may end up giving him the nod ultimately. The other guy is just so injury prone. As much as I do absolutely love his stuff, I think you need, again, innings eater guy, Farmer, that kind of guy. And then the other guy I just think is a little bit more raw, even though he's a little older, and I don't know that his tools have really added up to who he could be. And I think you want somebody who's reliable. And Buck Farmer, yeah, you said it. I think people crap on Buck Farmer way too much. That dude at times absolutely nailed it down. It was by the end of the season, he was getting exhausted because the Reds used him, by the way, in 71 games. He pitched 75 innings last year. That's more innings combined than Frankie Matas has in the last 2 years. So I just want to say that, like, he became that reliable guy. Like, his ERA, like, we got to get, away from ERA meaning everything, especially for bullpen guys. He'd have a bad game here and there, but he was consistently there, I think, to do the job, and I think he did a relatively good job. Like we've talked about, this bullpen was taxed by the time August came around for the amount of innings that they had to eat. I think that Buck Farmer was one of the guys, and Jabot, honestly, I think that they were 2 guys that were just absolutely exhausted by the end of the season because David Bell trusted them, and I think for good reason. So the one thing I will say is I do think Buck Farmer and Jabot are kind of in that same category as well. But I would give it to Jabot over Farmer. And I just mean more of like, we've got our lefties, we've got our for sure, end of the game guys. I think Jabot and Farmer are, those other righty guys that you have to decide what you're going to do with. I genuinely favor Jabot's talent way more. It's just that the reason why I had Farmer as a lock is they also went back out and got him again. Like, they went out and actually signed him to a brand new contract instead of just kind of letting him walk, like they did with like Derek Law. I would have thought would have actually gotten a lot more consideration just based on the way that they liked using him. So I feel like the way that they decided to go back out and get Buck Farmer for this reason, like not even a minor league invite to camp, like full on signed $2.2 million deal, like that to me screams like they're anticipating him making the bullpen.
Okay, well, we disagree. I will say he gets a bad rap because he didn't eat a lot of innings, and David Bell put him in a lot of bad positions.
Yeah.
I am a big ERA guy. I do think ERA means a lot more than any other stat you can show me, especially we find out like with wins. Like, don't even talk to me about pitcher wins after some of the things we've seen the last couple of years. But it's good if you get wins. That's always good. But no, it's ERA. He has never had an ERA that is lower than Ian Jabot last year of a 3.3.
Sure.
So with that, with the fact that he's had a couple good years, but a lot of bad years in his career, he did have a 4.2 ERA, but again, maybe it should be closer to 4 when you take into how many times he was taxed and going into games. I love that he eats innings. I love that he can be the guy that everyone's like yells about this is our worst bullpen guy. Like, screw this guy. That's fine because he did pitch pretty well last year. But I'm going to go with one of your guys. I'm going to go TJ and they want him to be a big part of this Reds team. His stuff is nasty. He is on a regular spring training schedule. So there's no injury holdups right now. Whether he's comfortable coming back from the injury is the only thing, but there's nothing injured wise that's going to hold him back. So his stuff is nasty. I think he can fit a couple different roles like we talked about before. I think that does, like, again, you're picking between two good pitchers here with Buck Farmer and TJ Antone, in my opinion. I know you had Fernando Cruz and Alex Young listed, but I think Antone's the guy. You're right. I don't think you need 3 lefties. I could see Williamson getting a third lefty thing here for David Bell because he loves the matchups and loves to play the matchups as much as anyone in the world. But I don't know. It's going to be hard to keep TJ Antone off the roster opening day, especially because I do think he seems healthy. And honestly, for you, buddy, I know like he's one of your favorite Reds the last couple of years. You were big on Tony Santillan. That didn't work out. You were big on some of these other guys. TJ Antone's another one where if the injuries don't happen, maybe he probably has a bigger role and it works out. So I do think TJ gets the nod. I wouldn't be totally upset if Buck Farmer gets the nod over him to start the year, but I think Buck Farmer I think the first 7 we talked about are pretty solidified in my mind. Buck Farmer is on the chopping block, and it could be TJ Antone if he's better from the injuries because his stuff is just crazy.
Well, and that's the thing. To be clear, like, I struggled a lot with not putting Antone in there, to be honest, but he had more injury concerns down, the later part of the season. Like, it's good to see that he's fine and he's doing well, but like, that dude is, one bad pitch away from a third Tommy John surgery, right? And I love him. I want to see him succeed because I do think that out of almost every other pitcher in this bullpen, outside of, I think, probably Diaz, I think that his stuff is the second best in the bullpen. That's over Lucas Sims, who I just raved about, right? Like, I think when Antone is on his game, he is also damn near unhittable. Like, he's a kind of guy that could easily find a way, like, if he can maybe just keep his arm healthy and take like a couple miles an hour off the ball, right? A little less effort. Like, he could truly be an electric, awesome, like, back half of his career closer, without a doubt. Like, and one of the better ones in baseball, I think, because I think he is that good when he's healthy. It's just that for me, I'm valuing right now health, and Farmer does eat innings. I even think you're being a little unkind to him in terms of like his ERA and stuff. Like, once he kind of figured it out in 2018, he's been consistently hovering around a 3.8 to 4, which I think for an innings eater guy, that's what you want. At least in my mind. I don't value ERA as much in bullpen guys just because, like, if you have one bad game and your coach just leaves you out there to give up 8 runs in a game, like, that totally screws your ERA for like almost the entire season. I think they did that with Farmer pretty consistently. But at the same time, like, I do love Antone, and to be fair, he is the better pitcher. I just think that they are going to value health and that they're going to end up picking him because of that. But I personally, to be
Well,
clear, would put Antone in the bullpen over Farmer.
okay, well, you glossed over something. He is sitting around a 3.8 for most of the years. He had a 4.2 last year. He
Yeah.
had a 6.3 in 2020. So now, I know everyone's, or 2021, sorry. So I know everyone's like, hey, it's ERA. I think ERA does tell you, because you need to be able to get people out on your bad days. So your coach can leave you in there and screw it a little bit. But if ERA is above 4, you're 32 years old last year when this happens. You're going to be 33. We know the game's going younger. I don't know. If I don't take. To be completely honest, if I don't take TJ Antone, I'm taking Buck Farmer. If TJ
Sure.
Antone gets injured, if he does fall out, I don't want Fernando Cruz. I don't want Alex Young. I don't want Brandon Williamson in the bullpen.
No.
I don't want some of the other guys that brought in. It's one of those two, and it might suck that one of them has to be, sent down to AAA to start the year. But I do think there is a fine line. I think TJ Antone gives you the more upside. If you're going to have a bullpen that I think overall we feel pretty good about,
Yeah.
at least depth-wise. Again, not many stars because Alexis Diaz isn't known around the league yet. He will be. But it's like, this is a very solid thing, very solid unit they have. It's a good decision to have to make. And at the end of the day, if you have Buck Farmer over TJ Antone, I don't fault you that much. I do think maybe he's slipping a little bit back into what he used to be. And he's an innings eater. I love having those on the team because there's going to be games where, I don't want our starters to go further, or I don't want some of our other bullpen guys who are more valuable to have to go in there. And that's going to be a big thing for this team this year, I think, too. It's going to be innings eating. And I think David Bell's approach to how he uses the bullpen is, again, my knock on him from last year was the bullpen usage and the starters usage of like, hey, keep them in, even if they're rolling and they don't have over 100 pitches, just kind of like leave them in, let them go farther. I know the analytics can get to you, but if you're up 8-3, let the starters keep on going so the bullpen doesn't get taxed again. It's good that they have depth now because I think they can bring guys up sporadically throughout the year to kind of help with arm fatigue and all that stuff too.
Yeah, I think we're going to see Antone or Farmer if they don't end up going somewhere else. I don't know if Antone's out of options. I'm pretty sure that Farmer is. So I do think that's another reason why them signing him to a major league deal instead of a minor league deal makes me feel like they're going to end up picking him ultimately. But I'd have to check. So I just, again, I want this to be very clear on this podcast. I value Antone more. And I think that with him in the bullpen, that bullpen becomes a very, very, very strong bullpen. But I just, based on I just thought the day that they signed him, I was like, wow, okay, like they must value him more than I do. That was basically my entire processing of it. That's my reason why I don't think you sign him to a major league deal, even though it's not a lot. People are like, oh, it's not a lot of money. Like for an innings eater, totally last guy in the bullpen kind of guy, that is that's not a small amount of money. Like you don't go out, in my opinion, and re-sign a guy like Buck Farmer when you have Fernando Cruz, TJ Antone, and Alex Young, who all may not make your bullpen already on the roster. That's my reasoning behind it. So this is not me saying that Buck Farmer is better than TJ Antone. TJ Antone, again, is potentially the second best pitcher in the bullpen when he is healthy. I just worry about his health, and I think that they're going to value somebody who can 100% most likely go out there and eat innings when you need them to. Because if it's not going to be him, then I think it ends up being Pagan. I think he has to be like the innings eater guy. Because like for me, in this bullpen, I think Pagan is probably the 7th best pitcher out of those 8.
Wow, you really don't like Pagan.
I just don't think he's that. I don't think he's bad, but I don't like if I truly if I had to rank who I have in my 8 right now, it would be Diaz, Sims, probably Mole, Jabot, Suter, Martinez, Pagan, Farmer.
Okay, I mean that's fair. I will say I think TJ Antone is better than Buck Farmer. Farmer just gives you more security. It's a safer play to start the year. He's going to eat the innings. If you don't like what he's doing, you can always bring Antone up later.
Yep.
We also have to get into is Antone going to be himself again? How many times has the guy been injured? Can he come back and be himself? Now the spring training, again, I'm not huge on it, but guys coming over injuries, guys trying to make the roster, guys trying out new pitches, this all interests me in different ways. You mentioned it, Rob. He did have 3 strikeouts in 1 inning. There were some rough bumps in the road there as well, but I think that's a good sign to start that he could be ready for opening day. And again, it does make the opening day roster, the bullpen, a lot harder than people might think. it's good. There's going to be someone here that everyone blames, and it's going to be the bullpen's worst pitcher, and that's every team in every world ever. Even like the 2004 Red Sox, that was Bronson Arroyo or Curtis Laskanik. I think it was Curtis Laskanik. I think is his name. He was one of the guys. So like everyone just hated that guy, but he comes in the playoffs and gives good innings. But yeah, it's like one of those things where we're going to have someone we hate, but overall we like the depth of this bullpen. I like the upside. I like what they did last year, given how many innings they had to pitch. So I'm excited. I don't like I said. I like Buck Farmer. I just there's not enough spots. It's like it's like when you're if you coach like Rob, you coach high school baseball. You have to cut some people sometimes, and it sucks to do, but you only have so many spots. So
no, for sure, and that's the thing is it's really hard because I think this team. I think you guys are going to hear it a lot. Like we're going to try our best not to overhype this team, especially me. But the fact that like these are the kinds of decisions that we're having to make, not like, oh God, who's their 8th guy going to be in the bullpen? He's got like a career 7 ERA and we have no idea if he's going to be able to do anything. Like we are arguing over whether or not Buck Farmer is a 3-8 pitcher or a 4-2 pitcher. That's essentially what we're discussing with him, right? And like whether or not like, again, Fernando Cruz is very talented. He would make a lot of bullpens in baseball, like probably the majority of them. Same with Alex Young. Obviously, if Buck Farmer gets cut or Antone, goes down to AAA, like every guy that the Reds have in this bullpen right now should be on a major league roster, in my mind. It's just whether or not they're going to make the Reds one. And I think we're going to see a lot of those similar decisions. Like, again, I think, Fairchild even, right? Like he's our guy. I think that we've both discussed that's like the 26th man potentially on this roster right now. That dude could easily go to a place like Oakland and absolutely be a everyday player there, right? Like he's not the best, obviously, which is why he's the 26th man on the Reds roster, but we have such a great depth problem that we're all going to be sitting here arguing over guys who are ultimately going to end up being very back end of the barrel guys while the rest of the team ends up crushing it. So I'm excited, and I love that these kinds of discussions. These are the things that I get super hyped for because when it comes down to it, those guys do end up having to play in some meaningful games for you, right? As much as we want to write it off as like Farmer's going to be an innings eater guy, like maybe the bullpen is spent because they've played 10 days in a row, and they need a guy to come in that 7th inning and shut down a rally, right? But everybody else has been used the last 3 days or whatever. If Farmer can come in and do that, or if Antone can come in and do that, or Pagan or whoever, right? Whoever that last guy in the bullpen ends up being, then you're very thankful because that was a guy who could also do it in years past when he was in a more prominent role. So this is awesome. I'm enjoying this so much, by the way. Like these are such fun discussions to have, and I hope you guys out there who are listening and watching do feel that as well. But do you have any final thoughts on any of the stuff we went over? This is by far our longest episode, but I think we had a lot of players to go through as well. So
absolutely. I love when some of these marginal guys get signed. I love the passion of the fan base. No, we don't want him, or no, he shouldn't take innings, or this guy shouldn't be in the bullpen. I love it. I can't wait until, like one of our weaknesses now is maybe catching depth in the minor leagues, not at the high minor leagues. Like, hey, if Stevenson goes down, I mean, I don't know, after Maley, what are we going to do? So I can't wait until 2 weeks from now when we sign like a veteran catcher and everyone's like, I hope he doesn't take innings. And it's like, no, it's just going to be for depth because if one of our catchers gets hurt, it's screwed. So it's like one of those things. I'm not saying specifically this is going to happen, but just I love when we start making depth signings where the guys do, hey, here's a tryout, here's a flyer, Josh Harrison. Oh, Josh Harrison better not take any at bats, or Tony Kemp better not do anything, or Mike Ford. And it's like, guys, like people get hurt all the time. Last year we saw how many of our young guys got hurt. Matt McClain already hurt this year.
Pitchers last year, 16. That's 3 full rotations and an extra guy.
But I love the passion. I love that we're doing this. I feel like an energy around the city building with this team. It's still hard because it's cold out still, but like you can kind of feel things building. And I do think there's going to be a pretty good season. Not that we haven't said that already.
Yeah, if you guys didn't think that we were passionate Reds fans, just remember this discussion that we had about Buck Farmer down the road, okay? Our passion is... Our love for the Reds is absolutely there when you're arguing about whether or not Buck Farmer is going to make the team, or if you like Mike Ford, who we'll probably forget about in a year. This is the kind of stuff we hope that you guys are enjoying on the Reds rundown. Let us know if you end up agreeing with our bullpen picks. Obviously, I think this may end up being the most controversy when it comes to the Reds roster, if I'm being honest. I think that these are the least amount of locked guys, and I think there's also, again, Pagan and Martinez are, and Mole even to a certain extent, are the most unknown guys for a lot of Reds fans as well. Because I think some people, stopped watching once it felt like they were out, even though they were never really out. I just know a lot of people felt like once September hit, they switched straight over to Cincinnati Bengals. So, which is to some degree understandable. But yeah, I'm excited for this team, and we really do appreciate all of you who've been listening. Again, please let us know if there are any topics that you guys want us to discuss. Joe and I are more than happy to do it, and we're really looking forward to continuing the show. Again, go over to the Reds Rundown YouTube channel to check out all the content that we're going to be doing over there. I'll be putting out my starting pitching rotation, guys, sometime this week. Depends on when, again, you're watching this. And then I think, any other major signings or any other thoughts that Joe and I have that think may be of interest to you guys, we will be putting out there. We don't necessarily have a consistent schedule for the, shorts and everything. It's basically going to be based on, news and maybe inspiration, I'll call it. But you do know that this show will be out every single Monday. So with that, we appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you on the next Reds Rundown.